Hello everyone. In this video, I want to talk you through the opening of Room and do a close analysis of Jack's narration. And I think this close analysis will be useful certainly for the question about Jack as an unreliable narrator, certainly useful for the question looking at his voice and interweaved with other voices. And it's even going to look at the setting and the presentation of Room. It won't touch on intertextuality, but for 3 out of 4 of the essays, this is going to be some key material. I'm hoping that it will give you an insight into the detail that we can go into as we discuss these examples, the kinds of examples that we can find in the book, and the kinds of evaluations that we can do on them, because you're going to be needing to find your own examples which are similar and your own discussion. So you can take some of my ideas, build it into your coursework response, but also I'm hoping you'll generate some of your own interpretations and insights as well. Okay, so I'm going to be using the Kindle version of Room, and I've used the online app, the in-browser app. And one of the features that this offers you is the ability to do highlights and annotations. So I've been doing some of that in preparation for the video. If you have got Kindle, if you've got Room on Kindle, then you might want to explore this ability to annotate. So using the PC or laptop or what have you, all I need to do is select and then click Note, and then I can put a note in. And then later on, I can look through all my notes. Basically, it's compiled the whole thing into a notebook. So this might be something you might find useful, particularly as you start to move into planning and gathering of evidence. Entirely up to you, might be a useful technique, but it's what I'm using for this activity. So let's start with the very opening sentence of the book. Today I'm 5. Obviously, that's in present tense, and the whole book's written in a present tense narration. And the basic thing to say always about a present tense narration is that it has the effect of immediacy. Okay, so it makes the experience of the book very immediate. And what that means is it brings you as a reader close to it. We feel that we are there in the present moment with the narrator. So it kind of brings you close to the action, really. I think we can be a bit more specific for this book and for this particular narrator, because I think it's typical for the young child. It's very natural for that small child to live in the moment, for that present moment to be a very, very vivid, and almost everything for the 5-year-old. The future basically doesn't exist. Interestingly, in this opening, we see Jack trying to get to grips with the past and trying to build a narrative of his past. But certainly emotionally, the present is everything. And you can see this with little kids. So there'll be floods of tears 1 second, and then there'll be smiles and giggles the next second. So it's this kind of moment by moment existence, which I think the present tense helps with, really, as you sort of move from moment to moment, but it's all very vivid and immediate. Okay. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the accuracy and the specificity of Jack's narration. He's very interested in numbers. We see him counting his age here. Before that I was 3, then 2, then 1, then 0. Was I minus numbers, he says. Was I minus 1, minus 2, minus 3? So Jack loves to count. We get several examples of that. And it is an example of him almost obsessively looking at the minute detail of the world around him, enumerating it, and kind of assessing the precise numerical facts of his surroundings. But you can see how that's useful immediately for the setting question. Now, this sort of counting and this obsessive attention to detail can be tedious for Ma. It could be tedious for the reader. I think that's an interesting question. I'm not sure it is. I didn't find it particularly bogging me down as a reader, but that's a subjective response for you to think about. It certainly signals his fascination with exactly recording the data of his experience. I think that is one of the things that makes him quite a powerful narrator. You know, looking at the ways in which he's not limited and the ways in which his unreliability is counterbalanced. When he measures room, his measurements are absolutely reliable. So he discusses his methodology with Ma. He discusses the limitations of it, the accuracy of it. He's very scrupulous in his results. So that gives you an insight into the way this little boy's mind works. And I don't think it's so unnatural for a little boy to be to have this sort of fascination with counting and close-up attention to detail. But of course, when he's measuring room, what a beautiful and useful narrative device for Emma Donoghue, because she needs to tell the reader how small this room is. But how's she going to do that? Because for Jack, it's not small. It's his universe. It's everything. So she needs a way to create an event that's going to cause room to be measured. And the way she does it, she makes it a game. She makes it a game that Ma and Jack play. So this is a nice little example of a narrative device as Emma Donoghue solves problems about how can she get information over to the reader. So we see numbers later on, I think, so we can give more than one example. I just lay there counting the seconds, says Ma when she was sad before she had Jack. And Jack's question is how many seconds? How many exactly? So you can see this preoccupation with exactness and numerical precision. We'll come back to that later because I think there's more to say about how he responds to what Ma says. So this is kind of Jack as the little mathematician. There's almost a scientist in him as he tries to work out the puzzle of minus numbers. Could he be minus numbers? I mean, that is kind of getting into some profound philosophical areas there, really, because how do you conceptualize what you were before you were born? And he explores the idea of was I minus? Mathematically, that's perfectly logical. 1 comes before 2, 0 comes before 1, and minus 1 comes before 0. So he tests that out with Ma. Was I minus 1? And Ma says no. But he's exploring some quite profound mysteries of existence and of mathematics here. But balancing this very factual, this very data-based perception, there's what I've called Jack's magical thinking. And I think you get your first little signal of that narrative signal on this third line here. I've changed to 5, abracadabra. So overnight, this marvelous, mysterious things happens. Last night he was 4, now he's a whole new number. He's 5, abracadabra. So magic, I've said, is an accepted part of Jack's world, as it is for all 5-year-olds. So we need to read this as something that's perfectly natural in the experience and perceptions of small children. All small children live in a magical world to some extent. They will believe in mythical or imaginary beings. They will believe in, for instance, the Tooth Fairy, or perhaps Father Christmas, or perhaps ghosts, or perhaps fairies, or perhaps imaginary friends, or perhaps animals that can talk. And they won't be sure about what the boundaries are between fantasy, imagination, and reality. And that's something that Jack has to explore. But if we start to have a look at the examples of this magical thinking, we see it when Ma reveals the present that she's hidden away. And Jack's comment on it is, I think it was hiding all night invisibly. I think this is very typical kind of thing for a 5-year-old to say, really. He's still getting to grips with invisibility, existence, things not existing. And these are problems for him that he's trying to solve. For instance, where do the things that old Nick brings into the room come from? So although Jack's having to deal with these problems in a particularly heightened way because of room, in a particularly extreme way, I think, again, this is typical of a small child, this way of imagining things that are invisible, visible, and he's fantasizing and kind of coming up with hypotheses, really, about the way that the world works. Very natural, very normal. The next thing that I want to talk about is the way that Jack talks about the objects and things in room. It's one of the immediately noticeable things about his language, the way he talks about bed and lamp. So two things that I'd pick out here is you've got these capital letters, bed, lamp, and you've got a lack of what's called a determiner. Now, determiners are words like the and a and this and my. So a more standard narration would be Ma leans out of her bed to switch on the lamp. But those little determiner words are missing. Now, at this point, I don't think this is conventional for small children. I think something else is going on. So I want to look at this in a little bit of detail. Things in room are capitalized and they don't have a determiner. So this capitalization of bed and lamp and not saying the, one thing it does, it personifies these objects. Donahue, I think in the interview, called this a kind of animism. And I thought that that description is useful, really. Now, animism is where you see your whole world as kind of invested with a spirit or a personality. And that's strongly accurate, I think, for the way that Jack relates to the things in his world. So he has an emotional relationship with plant or lamp. They are his friends in some sense. And I think children will do that. It's part of the power of their imagination that they will invest personalities and characters into these inanimate objects. So that is kind of natural and normal. But I think there's something more than that, and you can see it in the missing out of the or a. And this isn't normal. And I think what this signals is that in Jack's universe, only one bed exists, and only one lamp exists, and only one wardrobe, and only one lamp, and only one skylight, and so on and so on and so on. Okay, there is only one of these things. Therefore, it doesn't make any sense for him to say this lamp, a lamp, my lamp, the lamp, okay? Because there is only one of them. And these determiners, they determine which one you're talking about. This, that, those, my, your. These words are meaningless for Jack. They have no function because there are no two beds to discriminate or differentiate between, okay? So it's a small little language detail, but I think it gives you a powerful insight into the nature of Jack's world and therefore Jack's mental experience of it. And it's kind of a thing that's hard to imagine, really, a world in which there is only one plant, there is only one bed, and therefore the words the and a are not necessary for describing these things. The final thing that I'd like to talk about is what we can definitely regard as limitations or restrictions in Jack's narration, which is the starting point, really, for at least one of our coursework titles. So if we take an exchange like, you were all sad till I happened in your tummy, you said it. let's look at that phrase, "you were all sad." So this is a good example of Jack's restricted understanding of Ma's experience. It's highly simplified. It's a child's version of Ma's trauma and depression. It reminded me of when he described Ma as being gone later on in the book. And this is when she's so depressed that she becomes unresponsive, catatonic. And he uses this word gone. And in these words, all sad, gone, there's a kind of a plainness to them. There's a matter-of-factness, an unemotional simplicity to them, I think, which is that is very typical of a 5-year-old. They don't have the complexity and the sophistication to be able to understand the depth of these emotions, of what exactly depression is or trauma is, or the depth of that suffering. But all sad is not wrong. It does give a simplified but in its own way powerful description of Ma's experience. And then Ma responds with, "You said it." The reader understands the weight behind Ma's affirmation here. So that, yeah, I was all sad. And I think behind that "you said it," there's a kind of an aching inability to talk about what she really went through. There's so much she can't explain to Jack. So let's have a look at another example, which is perhaps even more powerful. So Ma and Jack start to talk about what happens if Jack gets sick. So Ma's a good mum. She's trying to teach Jack to keep clean so he doesn't get poorly, doesn't get ill. And Ma says germs can make you die. And Jack's interested in this. He's interested in this idea of what happened before I lived, what happens after I live. And he says, and will I go back to heaven early? So Jack has got this sort of simplified, magical version, child's version of death. You could regard it as euphemistic. It's clearly reflecting back the way that his Ma's talked to him about, you came from heaven, you will go back to heaven. So to try and make the idea of death comforting and acceptable, but hiding all the dark adult pain of it. And what I was interested here is what Ma doesn't say, and the fact that she doesn't respond to this idea of going back to heaven early. And instead, she turns back to the matter-of-fact business of him still biting his hand and being naughty. So she doesn't want to talk about Jack going back to heaven. And I thought that was significant. So what I've written here is this. Ma dodges Jack's question about going back to heaven early. In other words, dying. Jack's innocent, magical understanding of death is very different to Ma's. Ma cannot bear to think or talk about the loss of her little boy. So I think in that not answering, that turning away, that evasion from his question, there's pain and there's fear and there's terror. And an intelligent reader, an attentive reader will spot that. And the reader will understand what will be going on inside of Ma and understand why Ma can't deal with this and can't respond back to Jack. So it's a subtle little thing, easily missed. Donahue doesn't make a big deal of it, but I think there's an interesting and powerful gap between what's happening in Jack's mind here and what's happening in Ma's mind. And on one hand, this book is a book of closeness between the two of them, but at this point, there's this aching gap between the way that Jack and Ma understand the world. And I find that gap moving because it comes from partly from Ma wanting to protect Jack and just giving him comforting stories about going to heaven and coming from heaven, protect him from the darkness of the world. And I think it speaks to me of Ma's loneliness because she has nobody that she can talk to about these things. She only has Jack. And Jack is not capable of having these discussions about life and death and suffering on Ma's level. And so Ma has to turn away. So there's a kind of an unspoken pain there, which I find quite moving and quite affecting. So this is a place where I think narrative gaps can have a powerful emotional effect. We can start to portray the relationship between mother and son in an interesting way. And it's an example here of what's not said. The gap, the silence, the absence, the failure to respond is the significant thing. So that's the sort of thing that I hope you'll be able to find for yourself as we go on and look in more detail at other parts of the book. And I hope that at least some of that made sense to you. So thanks for listening. Bye-bye.